All right, so this is actually going to be the first episode ever of the SaaS AdLab Podcast. So I want to introduce everyone to Omer. He is located, where are you located?
I'm in Melbourne, Australia.
Awesome. So we have someone from the other side of the world. I'm currently located in Phoenix, Arizona. So very different places. I've never been to Australia, so that would be amazing if I ever got the chance to go there. So again, thank you, Omer, for hopping on here, and tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you come up with the idea for Vervoe? Is that how you pronounce the company?
It is, yeah. I'd love to. I moved from Israel, where I grew up, to Australia a lot of years ago, and I didn't have a university degree yet. I just finished my military service, and Israel is a very entrepreneurial society, and there I'd served in the military, and I worked at a couple of startups. I went to a good school, and I had what was considered a good resume.
Okay.
And then I came to Melbourne and I applied for like 100 jobs and couldn't get an interview.
Uh-huh.
And I found myself in a society that kind of valued pedigree, university degrees, and things like that. And I was this guy with like a name no one could pronounce, from the Middle East, and I couldn't get a foot in the door. And I found it really frustrating. I felt rejected. I felt like these are jobs that I could, companies I could contribute to, and jobs I could do really well at. And I can't get in. And that feeling stayed with me for a very long time. And then much later on, when I was in a senior role in a major bank, I was building a team. I had a team of 25 people, and I saw things from the other side. All these amazing people in my team that didn't necessarily come from, a good university or didn't necessarily, or hadn't worked at a company with a brand name, but they were awesome.
Right.
And then I'd have all these people that like these fancy resumes that would be submitted to me by headhunters, and we'd meet with these people for hours, and they couldn't think laterally, or weren't curious, or didn't have the work ethic we wanted. And it just all hit home that like the way that most companies hire by screening people based on their background, it just doesn't work. It doesn't translate into performance or effort or attitude. And I got together with my co-founder, David, who was working in Silicon Valley in tech and had very similar experiences, with people who were self-taught versus Stanford grads. And we said, like, let's do something about it. Let's create a world where companies and candidates can connect in a more authentic way, and make it more about, can you do the job, not how good do you look on paper.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah. And that's one of the big things I feel like, is what really makes an entrepreneur. It's a lot of the time you see all these big names, right? Like Jeff Bezos and all these people that usually don't have like an actual background in whatever it is that they're doing. They just kind of go into it and figure everything out that they needed to do. And that's something that I kind of did myself as well, as far as digital advertising, when I went to school, they weren't teaching, any of that stuff, because one of the reasons I think they do it is everything changes so quickly that they can't even have a curriculum for it. So they would have to be changing every single lesson pretty much on a monthly basis for example, GDPR and Facebook, right? Like if that happens in the middle of the school year, then you have to change everything up right away. And that's impossible to keep track with. So I think that's
such a great point, about the roles of the future. There are so many roles that we help our customers fill that they didn't exist 5 years ago.
Exactly.
Like SEO. How many people were doing SEO 5 years ago? And now, every digital agency is hiring people, and universities aren't teaching this stuff.
Exactly.
They're not teaching influencer marketing. They're not teaching, there are just so many things. Data scientists now are in demand. There are just so many things that are changing, and you can't put people in boxes. You can't try and hire people in the traditional way. You have to look at things differently. You have to see, how can people contribute? How quickly can they learn? How can they apply themselves? If all you look at is, this person went to this university and got these grades, you're going to miss out on some incredible people that can contribute to your company.
Yeah. And like you said, the SEO thing, even if they were teaching it, by the time the people graduate, everything would be completely different.
That's
Like
right.
there's just so many changes constantly that happen. And that's probably the reasons why companies like Google and I'm pretty sure Amazon and Apple, they don't require a degree anymore. So it's just people that are in there doing the things that they love and really appreciate, what they do. And I think it's really the passion and actually knowing how to do it instead of just reading it from a book, because you don't actually get to do most of it. So I think you have a good point there. And so tell us a little bit more about what do you do for Vervoe, or not what you do for Vervoe, but what does Vervoe do exactly?
So what we do is we help companies see how candidates perform tasks that are most relevant to the job. So instead of what did you do in the past, or where did you study, or all those kind of things, we ignore all that and we just focus on, can you do the job and how will you do the job? So if it's a sales role, we'll get you to do a mock cold call, or write a cold email, or deal with objections or a negotiation. If it's a product designer role, then it'll probably be some form of design exercise followed up with questions to explain your work. If it's a retail role, it might be watching a video of an angry customer and having to respond to that. It could be an Excel test. If it's a finance role, it could be editing a PowerPoint presentation, or writing a press release, or solving a problem with code or with data. So it's all about what can you do and how do you do it, not what do you claim to be able to do on your resume, or which logo did you work with, and we don't really know how much you did versus other people. It's just about
you have the whole
how
team,
well can you do the tasks.
Exactly. Great point. I love that. And I think that's a lot of the things that not only the people, applying to these positions, but also the employees struggle with, right? So it's kind of like you're pretty much aiding both sides of the spectrum. You're going after the employer,
Right.
and also the recruiters, or the people that are
the
applying.
candidates.
Yeah.
And that's a great point, because there are sort of two benefits for the candidate. So first of all, candidates, they get a chance to showcase their talent, and they're not held back or disqualified arbitrarily, but also they get a chance to see what the job is going to be like. And they get, we survey all the candidates and we get feedback. And often they say, wow, I got a realistic view of what I'll be doing. And actually I'm more excited than ever. Or maybe actually this is too hard. This is not for me. I'm going to rule myself out. And that's great. That's great. It saves time for everybody, because candidates actually get to see what they're going to do instead of wasting all this time only to discover later they're in the wrong place.
Exactly. That's awesome. So as far as how long have you actually been with Vervoe? How long has the company been around for?
Yeah, so just over a couple of years now. But a lot of that time was spent, behind the scenes building the first version of the product. We sort of really started hitting the public scene mid last year when we started doing PR and launched. So just over a year in the market publicly, out of beta. And it's been crazy. We sort of acquired 4,500 customers in that time. We've gone from 2 founders bootstrapping to a global team of 25.
That's awesome.
And raised some money along the way as well. And, it's been a crazy ride.
And so now that you mentioned that it's been a crazy ride, and I feel like a lot of these companies are, right? Anything that's in SaaS or anything that you have no one really knows if your product's going to work or not, right? Obviously you yourself at the beginning, it's a great idea. And then it comes time to execute. So how did you, I guess that's the wrong question here. What have you found has been the most struggling task, right? When growing the business and putting everything to actual, connecting all the dots, what would you say has been the thing that made you struggle the most? You and your co-founder and really any team members.
Yeah. I'll give you 2 answers. I'll tell you what I think the hardest thing has been for the company, and then the hardest thing for me personally as a founder.
Okay.
So one of the things that we struggled with in the beginning was telling our story in the right way. We're not iterating on something existing. We're essentially inventing a new category. We're saying to people, listen, instead of looking at resumes and screening and then doing interviews, don't do all those things. Test candidates online, give them a chance to prove their skills online, and every candidate, excuse me, not just some. And it's just a fundamentally different way of thinking. And we sort of, in the beginning, we weren't sure, like, should we be using familiar language like interview, or do we want to and say we've got an online interview, or should we say actually interviews are bad, we've replaced them with something else, which is a bolder, less safe approach, but it's going to apply to less people because you're really going after early adopters. And we didn't know how to talk about ourselves in a way that really was reflective of the opportunity of how much value we could add, and being true to ourselves. It took us a while to figure that out, to really be ourselves and own our own narrative. And we tried a lot of things. I did a whole bunch of podcast interviews and conferences, and there's kind of a curve of improvement over time. Yeah. There were people that helped us along the way. There was one lady we worked with on our brand and language that really was a step change. But I think a lot of it was also practice and getting feedback and just getting better and better and better over time. But I think we reached this inflection point where it clicked, and all of a sudden we knew, like, what's the 10-second elevator pitch, the 60-second elevator pitch, what's the 5-minute pitch, what do you put in an email, what do you put in a deck, what do you do in a discovery call, like all these things, which we've now nailed. But, in the beginning, like, I'd go to like a family event and people would say, so what do you do? What does the company do? I couldn't even explain it. I couldn't. And now I just say, we help companies hire, like, we test skills. Okay, what skills? Like, it's easy. Or I talk about, we make hiring about merit. Okay, at least it doesn't tell you everything, but it gets the curiosity.
It gives you an idea, right?
Right, and we've kind of learned, and that was, I think, the biggest thing for the company. And when we, before we got that right, we were attracting the wrong customers because we were positioned incorrectly, and that was reflected in our website language, in the way we talk. And once we got that right, and then we filtered that through to all our channels, everything clicked. Everything started working. I think for me personally, I was sort of working myself into the ground for a long, long time and stressing about everything. And I never really made that transition from two-person company where the founder does everything to being a CEO of a 25-person company where I can actually let go of things. And I was so in the weeds and so kind of immersed and stressed and sleep deprived that I was just losing sight of my own health and the big picture. And I went on a couple months ago, I went to the US for a month, and I took my first ever vacation since we founded the company. Actually, not far from you. I went hiking in Utah. Awesome. And no technology, 9 days. Unbelievable. And I came back a new person. I didn't come back to any of the things I was doing. I let everything go. And now I only do basically things that meaningfully move the dial for the company, or where there's no one in the company better skilled than me at that particular task. Right. And so now, like, I've kind of found my own place as the CEO of the company and really transitioned. And I'm more productive. The team's happier. I sleep better. I feel better. And that's been for me, like, on a personal level, the most difficult kind of letting go and really making that transition as a founder from the bootstrapped guy, writing the copy on the website, like doing every single thing to now I just let go of things that they get taken care of. And even if they don't, I don't stress about them. I just I ask myself, well, is this going to make a meaningful difference to the company? If not, don't worry about it.
Right. So you actually mentioned, and that's a great 2 points. And you mentioned one of the struggles was being as far as, branding and things like that. And also you mentioned that you were going, or you were attracting, I think, the wrong customers, right?
Yeah.
So what is your niche, or do you have one?
So we solve a particular problem, which is once you've got candidates, say you've got 100 candidates for your role, we help you get from 100 to 1 or 2. That's what we do. We help you make a decision on who is the best person to hire.
Okay. So these people are already coming with candidates for you.
Right. And in the beginning, we were attracting people who wanted to solve a process problem, not a selection problem. So they wanted like an applicant tracking system to do process tasks. So first of all, they were getting disappointed because we don't have advanced features in that area, because that's not what we wanted to be really good at. And second, they weren't using the product to its full capacity because they didn't want deep skill testing. And third, then they'd compare us to the wrong competitors and say, oh, but you're expensive. And actually, we're not expensive, but compared to these other things, you're comparing us to the wrong thing. And we realized actually, it's like saying if someone's hungry and you keep giving them water, well, they're going to get annoyed, and eventually this meal isn't very good. And okay, so we then realized we have to actually take a step back and attract the right people. And once we started doing that, everything changed. There were no price objections. The feature requests were totally different. They were in our sort of core area that we invest around testing. There were people who wanted to replace interviews. And all of a sudden, big companies started to come. And so that made a really big difference, just for us to be honest with ourselves and say, actually, we're not this, we're this. And we won't get dragged into this direction, even if it means losing customers and saying no.
And you have to always, I think that's one of the biggest things that, startups have a hard time realizing, is the fact that they need to be saying no to certain people, because not everyone's going to be a good fit. And that's something that I've personally dealt with. And I think that's a lot of people that are dealing with, and like you mentioned, it's just, you have to say no to specific people because it's not going to be a win-win. So then there's really nothing.
That's right. And we have customers that say, why don't you develop all these features? And when are we going to have it? And we say never, because that's not our vision. That's not, that's not what we want to do. We want to be really, really good at A. And if you want B, there are other folks in the market that do it better than us. And we're going to be very honest with you about that. And I think having the conviction to say that, having that, first of all, understanding that for yourself around your own identity. And then second, being able to say that to the market and say, this is what we stand for. This was our vision from day one. This is our mission. And this is how we're going to invest. This is what the roadmap looks like. It's 100% tied to the company's mission, which is to make hiring about merit, not background. That's what we want to get good at. We don't want to get good at like all these other things that are peripheral to that. Yeah. And because you can get drowned in feature requests and you will never, ever, ever move forward. You will constantly be chasing tail for the wrong customers. So that's really important.
Do you think that focusing on one thing specifically at a time, so I mean, you could have different items, right? But you think focusing on one thing for the company specifically at one time, or having multiple people focus on different tasks, is better than having either a team or just one specific individual focus on, 3 different things at once?
That really depends on capacity and the size of the team. So if you're big enough, you can have multiple work streams. And we sometimes split the team, but by and large, we work as one, and there's one theme. So for example, between now and the end of the calendar year, there's one major thing that we're trying to release. Now, alongside that, there's bug fixes, there's some minor features, a whole bunch of other stuff. But there's one big thing and the whole team's going to be working on it, and it's going to occupy 50 to 60% of the sprint load until then. And that is what the whole company, product development, engineering, data science, so the designers, the developers, the data people are all working on this major initiative. And we then, because we then also need to tune like sales, marketing, PR, all need to be aligned. So we need to release it to the media at the same time. And if we start deviating and getting distracted, we delay, we compromise quality. We have customers expecting things that don't come on time. And we're not Facebook. We're not that big where like we can have, you know, pods of 50 engineers doing all these different things. We're like, we've got 8 engineers and 3 data scientists, 2 psychologists, and that's it. So awesome. we have to be like really, really targeted in what we're delivering. And at any given time, we're probably only delivering 20% of the total like demand. Like we're drowning in requests for integration. Our customers want so many things, and we can't do them all. We can't do them all. Even if some of them are definitely like core things, you know, they might take 3 to 6 months until we can get to them because the roadmap is crammed.
Mm-hmm. So how long does it usually take? And I have another question to that I don't want to forget. How long does it usually take for a project, right? So for, let's say that someone gives you the 100 candidates, how long does it take for them to go through the process of testing and really?
Oh, cool. It's very quick. So typically candidates have 4 days to complete. We call them a talent trial. That's the test. The talent trials can be 20 to 30 minutes, or they can be a little bit longer if they're more in depth. So a design challenge might be a few hours, or advanced financial modeling, but typically something at the top of the funnels or something at the point of application will be up to half an hour. And candidates usually do it pretty quickly. And we developed machine learning algorithms that automatically grade the responses and rank. And so what then happens is you can have 1,000 applicants and they'll all complete their talent trials. And you as an employer will then get them stack ranked with a score, and they're ranked in order of performance. They all start from the same starting point. It doesn't matter. We don't care what their background is. We don't care what they did. It's just they're purely ranked based on how they performed the task. And then what you'll do is you're not going to look at 1,000, because who has time to do that? You will start from the top 10. And we guide you towards the ones who are most probable, most likely to be suitable for your role based on how they perform the task that you told us you care about the most.
Makes sense. And as far as the whole ranking, right? Obviously the top 1 to the top 3 essentially are going to be the best paid, right? So is that something that the company, let's say whoever's working with you, if you give them the top, I don't know, 5 or 3 or whatever, do they also get maybe a numerical as far as how much this specific individual should be making? Or is that something that the company?
We don't recommend salaries. We don't get into that at all. All we do is we tell you how well they performed. And then the company, so we start from typically the point of application. So once you've got the candidates, and then we help you make a hiring decision. But anything to do with even, so background checks, onboarding, salary, contract, we don't do that. We will partner or integrate or do things like that, but that's non-core. Our sweet spot is how to get from 100 to 1. Sometimes it's more than 1, because you might want to take a few people offline, or you might want to hire more than 1. But essentially we want to get you as close as possible to the best candidate, so that when you talk to that person, it can be about getting to know them and closing them, as opposed to trying to figure out if they can do the job. You've done that already. You've validated their skills. When you speak to them, it can be meaningful. It shouldn't be about trying to guess if they can do the job. That's been done for you.
Right.
And now you can have a great discussion and set them up for success and sell them on the company.
Okay. And how does this work as far as, let's say, because this is purely based off of performance, right? So what happens as far as personality and things like that? I know you mentioned that
Yeah.
you had some psychologists as part of, the team. So do they get involved in maybe finding the best fit as far as maybe culture and things like that go? So
Yeah, absolutely. So the language we use is skills and attitude. So we absolutely do both. Some people talk about it in terms of hard skills, soft skills. I don't particularly like that language. So we think about it in three categories: job specific skills, which is the things that are unique to the job, like selling or designing in Sketch or Excel or whatever.
Mhm.
The second category is general work skills. Some people call that soft skills. So that's things like it could be attention to detail or teamwork. They're things that they're still skills because they can be learned, but they're applicable to any job. It's kind of the how you do the job. And then the third category is personality. And personality, it's controversial on whether personality should be used in hiring, simply because two people with very different personalities can both be good at the same job. So what we do with personality is we integrate with providers of psychometric assessments, and they're available to be used in our library. And so essentially what we achieve is we give you a 360 view of the candidate. You can test candidates on skill, attitude, personality all together. And a great example is we do a lot of graduate and intern programs. And if you think about graduates and interns, they don't have a lot of history, a lot of work experience.
Mhm.
So, really it's all about their attitude. And so most of the testing with graduates is about attitude, motivation, ability to learn quickly, how much they buy into the company's story, how they'll work in a team. It's all those kind of intangibles.
Mhm.
And we're very good at that. So it's one of the areas that really makes us different to anyone else, that we combine the skills and the attitude to give you a very comprehensive view of the person you're going to hire.
That's awesome. So when it comes to what was the question? Uh, when it comes to, I guess, really, the industries, is there an industry that you serve most, or that you see that the industry comes to you mostly? Maybe it's like the tech industry, or what is the industry that you see that's usually more going to
Yeah,
gravitate towards the product?
there's a huge variety, but where we do really, really well is knowledge workers. Sort of like what we talked about before, new economy type jobs, digital marketing,
Mm-hmm.
companies that not just tech, but companies where there's a tech component, design, sales, marketing, engineering, also things like finance, customer success, customer service, call centers. So typically roles where medium to high skill. Because if you think about say hospitality, you're not really going to do advanced testing for hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense, and it's high volume. So typically in things like retail and hospitality, it's high volume of candidates and very superficial testing. It's more kind of almost a survey. It's pretty quick. Whereas if you're going to hire a UX designer or a growth marketer, you really need to know a lot about that person's capability. And so in that second category, we tend to do really well. And then, as I mentioned before, graduates and interns is the other area that we do well. So, and we don't do a lot of blue collar for similar reasons.
Yeah.
So it tends to be like we do a lot with digital agencies, advertising and creative agencies, a lot with tech companies, a lot with corporates, and a lot with staffing agencies as well.
Awesome. And is there a place where most of your customers are coming from, or is it just all over now?
everywhere in the world, probably half in the US,
Okay.
a lot in the US. We've got a sales team in the US and we focus on the US market a lot. Because the founders are in Melbourne, we have a lot of organic, inbound interest and referrals here in Australia. And mainly English speaking. We have Japanese, we have customers that we're using other languages as well, Spanish, Portuguese, Japanese, Mandarin, but less. The vast majority of the platform is English speaking companies and candidates, and strong North American focus today.
Awesome. Great to hear. So if you had, we're coming up on the 30 minutes here. If you had one piece of advice for any SaaS, founder, or anyone that wanted to create a startup, or anyone that was looking to use your service, what is, the piece of advice that you would give them? And I guess to that last question too, if they wanted to use it, when is the best time to come to you?
So I'll answer the first part first around advice or suggestion for someone who's building a company. I think really being true to yourself around the problem you're solving and sticking to that, and not sort of swashing around the market and pivoting every 5 minutes and trying to jump at different things, but having the conviction, even if it means that it won't work. If you give everything up to start a company, you typically do it for a reason, and it means that you believe in something. And so really stick to that and test it and find the market. Don't sort of stick to a market and change your product to suit them. Build what you believe in to solve a problem and find the market that wants it. I'm not saying build it and they will come. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that if you genuinely believe you are solving a problem, then have the conviction to back that and tell that story. And that comes back to what I was talking about before about our own sort of identity. In terms of us being valuable, really the main problem we solve is, instead of having to waste time on deciding who to interview, we help you give everyone a chance to prove their skills and then really quickly see who are the best performers. So anyone who's hiring regularly, if you're hiring once a year, typically you don't have that much of a need. But if you're hiring every month and you believe that a piece of paper is not going to really tell you who the best person is, and you don't want to miss out on amazing people, and you believe that hiring should be about merit, we're here for you. We're on your side, and we make that happen. We have companies from single person consultants to enterprise, and everything in the middle across a range of industries. And so, and typically they're companies that believe what we believe, and they genuinely want to do hiring the right way and make it about what can someone do, not which gender are they from or which school did they go to.
What did the paper say?
Right.
And you actually answered one of the other questions that I had is, and you already answered, but do you have a minimum amount of candidates? Or I don't think you actually answered actually, but do you have a minimum amount of candidates that you need in order to have these tests? Or for example, if I needed just one candidate and I wanted to know, is he going to be the right one? Is that something that I can, have you guys work with me, or do I have to have a minimum of 10 candidates per se?
No, I mean, absolutely you can do that. So we have, our basic plan is for companies hiring, I think it's up to 10 people a year, one job at a time. And it's the price points. It's something like $100 a month, or maybe a tiny bit more than that. So it's a very affordable price point. I mean, it costs you $300 just to put a job ad out. So we definitely cater to that. And we do have companies that use us. The use case you described is bottom of the funnel. So you've typically like gone through a lot of the process and then you just really want to be sure about someone.
Okay.
So the answer is yes. Having said that, the vast majority of our customers do have some degree of volume. So typically 30 candidates minimum, simply because they're in more pain at that point. They've got to spend more time going through all the applications. Some of our customers have more than 1,000 candidates per role. And you can just imagine.
Yeah.
And so, and then multiple roles and so on. And so when you have that scenario, you have a bigger problem. And then, you know, we become very, very valuable, and they'll typically use us at the top of the funnel. So from the point of application, and put their whole process through our platform. But we do both.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And Omer, where can people find you online? Facebook page, Instagram?
Yeah, so the website is vervoe.com, VRVOE.com. And we have live chat. We use Intercom, by the way. And, you know, we talk to customers and prospects. Me personally, the best social network to find me is LinkedIn. That's where I spend probably the most amount of time of the social platforms. Very easy to find me on LinkedIn, and I do a lot of organic activity there. So I'd welcome connecting with people who believe the same things that we do, or people I can be helpful to as well. And typically people either find us through the website and then organize to speak to us or get started themselves, or they'll sort of engage with me personally on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And what about the last question I have for you? What is the best book you would recommend for someone, you know, that's starting a company, or someone that's just has this vision to do something big, right? To do something that's going to change someone's life for positive?
There's a book by Ben Horowitz called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Ben Horowitz from Andreessen Horowitz. And it's, you know, it had a profound impact on me because it's a no bullshit. You know, he really exposes the roller coaster and the emotions of the founder CEO, the being sick to your stomach when you're having to, like, when you think the board is going to fire you, or when you think you're going to have to fire every employee in your company, and literally every emotion in there I've had at one point, every anxiety. And he's not like talking about Gary Vee style, I'm crushing it. There's none of that crap. It's
right.
like, listen, this is what it's like building a company and failing a million times along the way and eventually succeeding. And so anyone going on that journey, if you're a founder or founder CEO, that is an incredible, very raw book that I'd highly recommend reading.
Great. I'm going to go pick it up right after this. Thank you for sharing. Omer, do you have any questions for me about anything?
How can I help? Yeah, I'm curious to hear sort of just about why you're doing this, and if there's anything I can do to help.
Why I'm doing this. I'm obsessive about SaaS companies, and I want to learn as much as I want. I figured, you know, the best way to do that would be to connect with them personally, the founders, the people that have been putting in countless hours, you know, day in, day out, sleepless nights, really doing, like you said earlier, just whether this little piece of copy is going to make a difference. And I honestly, like, I connect with that so well because I feel like I've been there, maybe not with the SaaS companies, but other companies that I've created in the past and failed and so on. So just really understanding everything. And I feel like I've always been a very early adopter to technology. So I like knowing what's out there, trying things out, and really understanding. And like I said, the agency that I own focuses on SaaS companies, and really that's the niche that we want to focus on, and really understanding, you know, how they operate and what they're doing, and the industries that they want to work with, I think it's going to enlighten me that much more to be able to help people like you, or people that are, whether they're a startup or they've been around for a while, and just marketing expertise that I want to share with people as well.
Cool. And I think that's a great, like learning from people who are doing it is a great way. And are you going to be focusing on B2B or B2C or both?
B2B.
B2B. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So that's it. I do have one more question. I don't know if I maybe should have asked this beforehand. If you have any sort of, deals for anyone that watches the podcast or something like that, or you want to set something on, feel free to let me know, and we can definitely get that.
Yeah, we can get together online, and if we get offline, and talk about that. And happy to, if there are people that are referred to us from your podcast, we can look after them for sure. And very happy to get organized on something like that. We typically don't do a lot of discounting, but in an organized way like this, we can always help our friends out and make people feel welcome.
Great. All right, Omer, thank you so much for the time today. It was a pleasure talking to you and just learning more about Vervoe, what you do, what you've been through, and everything that you know. And I really appreciate the time.
Me too. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks, Luis.
Thank you. Speak soon.
Okay.